I will call this meeting to order, the regularly scheduled meeting of the Transportation Public Works Committee. This day, March 27, 2018. I'm Councilmember Reich. I chair the committee, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Councilmembers Johnson, Fletcher, and Gordon. We are a quorum of the committee. We'll soon be joined by Council President Bender, who was in a meeting with me previous to this. We have several items on the agenda. Actually, I'll be adding on or walking on 2 items on the consent agenda, item now listed as items 24 and 25. They're on today's agenda, but they weren't posted previous to that. The nature of those items are pretty straightforward. They're low bids, and they're timely to the committee and the department's work. Though any item on the consent agenda can be pulled, I will go through those items in order, starting with item 4, North and South Sheridan Residential Area Street Resurfacing Project, and that's the postponed levy of assessments. Details are listed. Item 5 is the Wade Park 2017 Concrete Streets Rehabilitation Program. Again, postpone the levy assessments, details listed. Item 6 is the Highway I-69 Mobility Study, results and resolutions, and we receive and file that report. Item 7 is the Green Line Extension Supplemental Environmental Assessment, amended draft of Section 4 Evaluation and Comments. Item 8 is the Municipal State Aid Revisions. That's something we do annually. Item 9 is the 4th Street Reconstruction City Hall Block Layout Approval. Item 10 is the North Loop Project Layout Easements and Request for Variance. Item 11 is the North Loop Pedestrian Improvements Project Layout and Easements. We have item 12, which is Wade Park Neighborhood School Area 2018 Concrete Streets Rehabilitation Project Designation. Cost estimates in that public hearing we set for May 15th, 2018. Item 13 is the 31st Avenue South Street Reconstruction Project. That'll go from 58th Street East to East Minnehaha Parkway. And again, the project designation, estimates, and setting that public hearing for June 5th, 2018. Item 14 is the contract amendment with CH2M, Hill Engineers Incorporated for Fridley Softening Plant Decarbonation Improvements. Item 15 is the contract with Short Elliott Hendrickson Incorporated for Hennepin County Avenue. Project and price is listed. Item 16 is the contract with Black and Vetch for engineering services for tunneled water main. Item 17 is a gift acceptance from Green Minneapolis for revitalization of PV Plaza. Item 18 is the bid for the gate valve vault repair replacement. Item 19 is the bid for the cleaning of the large diameter sanitary sewer system. Item 20 is the bid for hauling and disposal of agricultural lining or liming materials. Item 21 is the bid for PV Plaza Rehabilitation Project. Item 22 is the regulation of bicycle sharing ordinance, clarifying for things that are changing in that industry. And the items are the ones that I mentioned that are walk-ons, which is item 24 is the bid for ready mixed concrete. And item 25, which is the bid for bituminous mixture, obviously for our road projects to come. Does anyone wish to pull any of these consent items? Seeing none, I will move all items as submitted. All in favor say aye. Aye. Dissenting name. We're joined by Council President Bender and Council Member Palmisano. We're now full committee. And we can go into our public hearing portion of the agenda. Good morning, Director Hutchinson.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Transportation and Public Works Committee. We have 3 public hearings today. All of them are project approvals and assessments. The first of which is Irving Avenue North. I'd like to introduce Larry Matsumoto with Transportation Maintenance and Repair, who will present information on each of these items.
Good morning.
Good morning, committee chair, members of the committee. My name is Larry Matsumoto, and I'm an engineer with the Transportation Maintenance Repair Division. I'm here to present to you today for the public hearing for the Irving Avenue North Street Resurfacing Project and to recommend the passage of approval of a resolution ordering the work to proceed and adopt special assessments in the amount of $133,185.19 and the passage of a resolution requesting the Board of Estimation Taxation to authorize the city's issuance and sale of assessment bonds in the amount of $133,185 for the Irving Avenue North Street Resurfacing Program. The project itself is bounded on Irving Avenue North from Lowry to Dowling North, with many of the street sections built in 1978. The PCI rating for these project streets are varying from 43, 44, and 50 as far as the PCI. Cost for the engineer's estimate is $8.3 million in 2018, and the approximate length of the project is 0.81 miles, a little short of a mile. The project scope is a 2-inch mill and overlay with approximately 130 feet of existing curb replacement with some center point energy utility work. Public Works designated this project on February 9th of 2018, and we had a community outreach meeting on Monday, March 21st, with 135 invitations mailed and 2 attendees in attendance for that meeting.
Are there any questions per the presentation? Seeing none, I will then open the public hearing. People can come forward and give testimony. Has anyone signed in? No one signed in. Does anyone wish to come forward? Does anyone wish to come forward on item 1? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and move the item as submitted. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay. That carries. We can now go to item 2, which I believe will be with Mr. Matsumoto as well.
Good morning, committee chair, members of the committee. I'm still Larry for the second time. Lindale Avenue North resurfacing is bounded by Weber Parkway to 49th Avenue to the north. This street was built in 3 phases from 1921 and the other 2 phases in 1983 and 1982 with a PCI rating of 42, 64, and 69. The Public Works is recommending the passage of a resolution ordering the work to proceed and adopting special assessments in the amount of $497,903.49, and the passage of a resolution requesting the Board of Estimation and Taxation to authorize the city's issuance and sale of assessment bonds in the amount of $497,905 for Lindale Avenue North Street resurfacing project. The project length is a 0.81 miles, a little short of a mile, and the project scope is a 2-inch mill and overlay with approximately 600 feet of existing curb replacement. CenterPoint Energy does have some minor service work and work on a couple of valves. Other planned work for this project is 2 new 5-foot bike lanes and a pedestrian safety improvements at the intersection of 45th and North Lindale. The project was designated on February 9th of 2018, and Public Works hosted a community meeting on Monday, March 19th with 52 invitations mailed, no attendees in attendance. The project is scheduled for summer construction.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions per that presentation from the committee? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing. I do have someone who signed in. I'll start with that person. Others may come up and sign in as well. Starting with Mr. Bob Mayer, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Bob Mayer. I live at 4810 Fremont Avenue North and work at 4835 Lindale Avenue North, which is right on this project. I have a question. My boss has a number of properties along Lindale, and it seems that the assessment varies widely among those properties by frontage or square footage, and I'm wondering if perhaps the staff could speak to how that assessment is calculated. And I would note that a business partner of my boss has a bar on 46th and Lindale, and his assessment is roughly 1/4 by square footage or frontage compared to my boss's assessment. So maybe somebody could speak to that. Thank you.
We certainly can. I'll first check to see if anyone else wishes to give testimony, and then we'll take all questions and concerns at once. Does anyone else wish to come forward? Anyone else wish to come forward? See none, I will close the public hearing, and perhaps we can give a quick response vis-a-vis our assessment process.
So I believe the question is on the assessment process. That was,
Right, how the assessment's calculated and why there would be like 4 times as much assessment on one property with the same frontage as another property.
the question on assessment and how the City of Minneapolis Public Works calculates the assessment is we use 2 factors. We use what's known as the uniform assessment rate, whereby we assess all properties the same unit cost throughout the entire city for this year. The unit rate is structured on either residential or non-residential property. From that, we also calculate the surface area of the individual property lots. And from that calculation of surface area times the unit rate, we come up with the total cost per property.
Okay. And why would the unit rate on a vacant lot be so much more than for a bar?
My suggestion for this part is that we do have staff here that can actually look at the specific parcels and explain how our application of our uniform process applied to that parcel, and you can judge for yourself at that point. Both our staff people are here. If you want to raise your hand, that are experts in this
We
area.
can go outside.
We're here for you. Okay. All right. So I believe that answers the question. For details we carried offline. With that, I will move the item, close the public hearing and move the item before us. Any further discussion? See none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Dissenting name. That moves forward. We now have our last public hearing, item 3. And it seems as though that'll be Mr. Matsumoto as well.
Good morning, committee chair and members of the committee. I'm here to present to you the 3rd and final public hearing for today, the Jordan West Willard South Residential Street Paving Project, and here to recommend the passage of a resolution ordering the work to proceed and adopting the special assessments in the amount of $1.2388 million for the residential areas of Jordan West and Willard South, and to recommend the passage of a resolution requesting the Board of Estimation and Taxation to authorize the city of issuance and sales of bonds in the amount of $1,230,890 for the Jordan West and Willard South residential resurfacing area. The Willard Jordan areas shown on the screen were built in 1977 for Willard, and Jordan 1979 with PCIs of 54 and 62 respectively. The total accumulated miles for Willard is 5.66 miles and Jordan 4.61 miles for the combined assessments for both projects. The project scope is a 2-inch mill and overlay with approximately 2,000 feet of existing curb and gutter replacement. Portions of this project will be delayed until 2019 to accommodate CenterPoint Energy and C-Line detour routes. The utility work in the area is, again, CenterPoint Energy replacing a number of their gas mains and services, upgrading the Beltline project, and other planned work, and this is part of the detour C-Line bus rapid transit. The project was designated on February 9th, and on March 20th, Monday, 989 invitations were mailed with 18 attendees who attended the meeting at North Commons. This project, I should also say, is recommended for continuance for the May 1st committee meeting so that those residents along the blue streets shown there, which are scheduled for 2019, can be noticed in a public hearing held on that date.
Thank you for notifying that, and thank you for the report. Any questions per the report? See none, I will open the public hearing. And just in case anyone showed up.
I am Richard Peel, and I live at 2365 Farrant Place. And I'm sorry I missed that public meeting. There are so many pages in this thing that I didn't see it on the last page. But I I look around my streets, and I drove down here today, and the only street I saw that was in better shape than our streets was the brand new Washington Avenue out here. Our streets are in very good shape. There's some cracks, but we just got done with a very harsh winter. And I think all we need is seal coating. We don't need this scrape off and repaving. We don't even have potholes. There's some cracks. I've got pictures of my streets here if anybody's interested. I don't know who would want to see them, but I took them this morning. And I just think that this assessment with the $1,500 is excessive for especially people in a low-income neighborhood like ours. And there hasn't been any repairs or seal coating done on these streets. If they just do that, our streets would be top notch, as good as the Washington out here. So that's my opinion. I just think regular maintenance, where you take that plastic stuff and put it in the cracks with the tar, that'd be very helpful. Rather than just 2 inches taken off and repaving the whole area when there's hardly any damage to our streets. I don't understand it.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. I'm going to call Kathleen Richard, and then I can take your testimony, sir.
Just stand on, except I'm short. Good morning. My name is Kathleen Richard, and I live at 2322 24th Avenue North. And I guess the reason that I'm here this morning is because I was shocked by the amount of the assessment. I didn't realize that my property would be assessed more than any of my neighbors. It represents fully a month and a half of wages for me. That's if I pay nothing else. So I don't know if that's negotiable or not, but I'm here this morning to see if there's any way that can be mitigated.
Okay, thank you. And there are staff that could answer that question offline as well. Sir, you may come forward and state your name and address for the record.
My name is W.H. Nelson, and I reside 3027 Thomas Avenue North, which is in the proposed Jordan area. I just wanted to come and get on the record as saying is I oppose that $1,500 assessment because it's like the other young lady just said, it's very expensive, and I pay a lot of taxes already, and then it's just like the city is pricing me out. Pretty soon I'm not going to be able to afford to live here anymore. And so I just wanted, I know it's probably going to happen, and I'm probably going to have to pay. And I don't like the fact that if I have to take time, I'm going to be charged 4.1% interest on a loan that I didn't even ask for. My street does need to be repaved, but like this gentleman says, I haven't seen any kind of mill work done on it. I have to call and complain about potholes, and they come out and patch it up. But then next year it's back rocky again, So I just wanted to go on record to say that I oppose this $1,500 assessment, and I don't know. That's it.
Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else wish to come forward? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, good morning. My name is Janet Robinson. I live at 2510 Vincent Avenue North. I missed the meeting on the 20th. I just bought the property the end of May. I didn't know about this. And like the gentleman before me, it's probably going to make me move out of the city. But mine is a little bit less than theirs, $1,210. But had I known that, just want to state that I'm kind of frustrated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to come forward? Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Raymond Nicholson. I live at 3022 Sheridan Avenue North. I've seen the city come through there in the last 30 years, and like the gentleman said, all they did was put a little tar and some gravel down. But they come through and plant trees, and trees are too big for the boulevard, and they push up the sidewalk. Then they come back and the city charges us for new sidewalks. I don't understand it. Either you want to narrow the sidewalk or do something, or we don't have to get these current costs. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And we have had done an extensive study on how we manage our trees.
I just want to add one more thing. And our neighborhood just had the sidewalk project done recently too. So I mean, this is like double whammy. You know, I mean, like I say, I think adequate job could get done in many places with just seal coating.
Thank you. And I think we are sensitive to compound costs, our base taxes, any other fees and services. But of course, these are the things that allow us to do what we do as a city. You can always check with staff to make sure we've gotten everything right in terms of the amount, make sure that we've applied our policy correctly. And also you can talk about what our options there may be in terms of how we can finance the repayment. It should be noted that it's not compound interest, at least it's simple, which is a big difference. But that might not be, to your point, though, that the costs do add up and the bill cumulatively can be very impactful, if not discouraging. So I take that on note. Now I'm going to close this public hearing. Is there any further discussion? We're going to continue. Sorry. We are going to continue this public hearing, and we will continue this conversation. So tell your neighbors and be prepared to engage with staff. And that will be continued to the hearing of May 1st, 2018. We don't need any other action at this point in time, and we'll continue this conversation. With that, I will go to the final discussion item. It will be, 10 o'clock, same time, same place. Okay, so we'll go to our last item, which is a discussion item, which is a inherently interesting topic, but some great announcements as well.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I am very pleased and proud to introduce this next topic, which is and don't get too caught up on the technical words because we're going to have a great presentation. It's the termination of the City of Minneapolis' National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, NPDES, Combined Sewer Overflow Permit. A termination often connotates something negative, and in this case, it connotates something extremely positive and beneficial for the city. Katrina Kessler is here to present this information. Katrina is the Director of Surface Water and Sewers for the city. This termination of this permit is possible because of Katrina, her leadership, her division's work. It's possible because of our data-driven approach to assessing infrastructure and making significant capital investments in order to repair our infrastructure. And it's possible because through years of work on the part of Public Works, we have developed extremely strong partnerships and connections with our partner agencies. This is a milestone for the department and worthy of a presentation to denote it. So without further ado, I'll introduce Katrina, and she will explain to you what all of these words mean and why it's so good for us.
Good luck with that. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and members of committee. Thank you for this opportunity to tell the story. I will give an overview of our sanitary and storm systems and talk about some of our challenges and our opportunities and talk about some of the tools we're using, as Director Hutchinson mentioned, and particularly our Clean Water Act permits and why they have positioned us well to move forward for another century of work on this infrastructure. This slide shows the extent of the sanitary system. On the right, you see color-coded by age. The red is the oldest sewers. Those were built prior to 1940. So we have between 800 and 900 miles of sanitary pipes, and the majority of them are more than 80 years or some more than 100 years old. You can see on the left-hand side the photo taken about the time that the sewers were originally built. This is the late 1800s, 1870s when Minneapolis was first incorporated with St. Anthony Falls. The images on the right are from our closed circuit televising, which is one of the layers of evidence we use to understand condition and assess risk in the sanitary system. They highlight some of the different shapes and materials that we have in our sanitary system. As you may know, the sewers were originally built as combined sewers. So this is not unique to Minneapolis. This is similar to cities that are commensurately old and around the same size as our city, meaning that there was one set of pipes that collected both the sewage and the rainwater and went straight to the river. And this was how it was between the first sewers of the late 1800s and the first storm sewers weren't built until development started around the lakes in the 1920s. And around this time, not surprisingly, people began to worry about the health of the river. In 1926, the National Park Service actually did a fish survey between St. Paul and Hastings and found 2 fish. Not 2 species of fish, but just 2 fish. And so at that time, the city of Minneapolis and the city of St. Paul came together and decided it was time to build a wastewater treatment plant. And that was the Pig's Eye plant, which was today, it's called the Metro Wastewater Treatment Plant in St. Paul. At that time, when that came online in 1938, all of the sewers, which were still combined, went to the wastewater treatment plant, which worked fine unless it was raining. And then the sewers were over capacity and they overflowed untreated to the Mississippi River. This was the case through the 60s when we started to build separate storm sewers comprehensively as part of a citywide paving program and accelerated the separation of both the storm and the sanitary. In the early 80s, the federal government began to pay more attention to this around the country. And with the help of the federal government, the city really data-driven started to work on separating the storm sewers from the sanitary sewers. And since then, we have focused on looking at ways that we can get direct connections of storm out of the sanitary sewers. And because of that intentional investment that Director Hutchison noted, we have essentially separated the sewers. So this is a success story, and I think it's worth noting that Minneapolis and St. Paul are the only cities that I'm aware of in the entire country that have been able to do this without this consent decree from the EPA. So most other cities, Midwest and on both coasts, are still under the thumb of the EPA, who are telling them year by year how much they need to invest and what they need to do. And the city has been able to do this proactively without that. This slide highlights not only the age of the sanitary infrastructure in brown, but the age of the storm. As I noted, we have almost 900 miles of sanitary pipe. 80% of them are more than 80 years old. Almost 50% of them are 100 years old. The storm, the majority of the storm is also more than 50 years old. So it's the age of the infrastructure and our need to protect human health and the environment and our desire to be good stewards of the public dollars that have driven us to take a data-driven assessment approach to this. So we're looking at the condition, we're using modeling tools, and we're working with our regulatory partners to make sure we have the tools we can to move ahead in a way that makes the best sense. This slide highlights the extent of the storm system. Not quite as many miles of pipe, but we have a whole lot of other type of infrastructure on the storm system to not only convey water, but also to treat water so that we can do our part to improve the water quality of the creeks, the lakes, and the river. One of the critical components of our storm system are our storm tunnels. So we have 16 miles of deep storm tunnels that underlay the most densely developed part of the city. Together with MnDOT tunnels, they drain almost a third of the city. So that's shaded in green here. The tunnels, like the rest of our sewer infrastructure, are very old and were built at a time that had less impervious surface. So they were built to accept runoff from a different landscape. As a result, we have a pressurized system such that when it rains, not only are the tunnels full, but the manholes 100 feet up are full of water, putting pressure on those tunnels. This picture shows the original construction of the Bassett Creek Tunnel, the old Bassett Creek Tunnel, which is today underneath the North Loop. So you can see that the construction techniques were different than we would do today, and that the landscape looks very different than it does today. Much of our work on the tunnel system today is not only understanding condition, but looking at the integrity and trying to find ways to decrease pressurization and filling voids and reinforcing the liner. This video is taken near the Como Avenue Tunnel near the University of Minnesota. We've since fixed this location by putting in a surge chamber, but it just highlights the fact that it represents not only underground risks, but above ground risks as well. So we've talked a little bit about aging infrastructure and the tools we're using, data-driven, televising data to look at risks and prioritize where we're going to look for capital and operation and maintenance investments. On the storm side, we're also looking at flooding. And many of you know this because you receive the same types of emails that I receive on a regular basis every time it rains. Historically, the city has taken was more responsive to flooding complaints, and we have since moved away from that and are doing a comprehensive stormwater model of the city, which will be complete shortly. And we're using that model to help us prioritize where we should look at mitigating flooding. I'll talk about several pilot projects we have underway. And as part of that, we're looking also where we need to do more for water quality. So where we need to fix infrastructure, where we need to address flooding, where also we need to put in water quality treatment to protect our lakes, creeks, river. And finally, how we can maximize the opportunities with our partners. Not only our internal partners when street reconstruction comes up, but our external partners like our watershed partners, county, and the Met Council. So what does this have to do with the Clean Water Act permit? Just a tiny bit of background on the Clean Water Act for those of you who don't live and breathe this. The 1972 Clean Water Act essentially established the foundation to permit wastewater and subsequently stormwater discharges. The photo on the upper right is the Cuyahoga River, which actually was the impetus, the catalyst for this, which caught on fire in 1970. The National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System is the permitting program that we and other cities have permits under to regulate both wastewater and stormwater. Historically, the city had two permits. We had a combined sewer overflow permit, or a CSO permit, with the Met Council. That was originally issued in 1984 and then again in 1997. It has been expired since 2001. We also have a municipal separate storm sewer system, or an MS4 permit, which regulates the stormwater. And that permit was reissued in February of this year with a novel approach called an integrated permit, which now recognizes the historical connected nature of our infrastructure. So why were we able to move away from the traditional approach and think about an integrated permit? This graph shows the outcomes of the work that Director Hutchinson was highlighting. On the left y-axis is the volume of overflow to the river over time, and on the right is precipitation. So you can see that even though we've had years of high precipitation, and one would say that we're experiencing a very wet period in the last several years, we've had no overflows from the sanitary system in 10 of the last 11 years. And we seem to have turned a corner around 2002, where we made a concerted investment with the leadership of the council to increase our work to identify where we had direct connections. We looked at rain leaders and catch basins and accelerated what today is called the smoke testing work. To date, this work has included smoke testing 550 miles of pipe, televising 600 miles of sanitary, 400 miles of storm, and disconnecting more than 7,000 rain leaders across the city. And we were able to do that in partnership with many private entities who then paid to do that. We have lined more than 90 miles of deteriorating sanitary pipes and separated more than 4,600 acres of drainage from the sanitary system. So this is a milestone, as Director Hutchinson noted, and it's worth just recognizing the leadership of past councils and the public works staff who were dedicated and committed to doing this over time. So the integrated permit, again, issued last month, acknowledges the historic connected nature and positions us to not only continue to look at what we need to do on the stormwater side, which highlighted up here will include an update to our stormwater ordinance, but also what we need to continue to do to minimize risks over time. As I said, the system is essentially separated, but there will always be work to continue to identify and address historic connections. So we've been taking an integrated data-driven approach, and some of these projects that I'm going to highlight will be familiar to you, but I want to just recognize some of the ways that we are integrating this going forward. The modeling work that we've done on the storm side has allowed us to not only address things like the flooding work, but it also lets us layer that on top of the condition of the pipes and the water quality. So this is the mid-city industrial project layout, and the red pipes I think they're red on my diagram. I think they're red there. Yeah, are the aging sanitary, which will all be addressed as part of this scope. But the blue is the flooding, and we're also going to mitigate the flooding there. And because we were able to think about the water quality needs as well, we will be addressing water quality. So we're getting water quality, flooding, and condition in this project, as well as addressing the condition of the street. So this is the example of the types of projects we're going to be doing using the tools going forward. Others up there include the redevelopment of Nicollet Mall and our ongoing light rail planning. We have a large project coming up for the Central City Tunnel. This is the last large project that was identified after a 2011 report that comprehensively looked at the work we needed to do on the storm tunnels. The Central City Tunnel underlays the entirety of downtown and protects not only the city, but like regional and statewide assets. And it is undersized and under pressure. And the segment identified here recently went through a feasibility study, and we're going to begin design and ultimately we'll be doing reconstruction on that segment, which will be done not by open trench. We're not digging up Washington Avenue, but we will be going through underground from the river and expanding the size and the capacity. This work is made possible by the modeling so that we understand what is necessary to make our system resilient for the next 100 years. You saw on the graph that we have not had overflows for the last 10 years. The only time we had an overflow was the result of a failed storm tunnel, and this was in downtown in the Central City. Because the system was over pressure, the water found a crack, shot out through the sandstone and penetrated the Met Council's wastewater interceptor nearby and resulted in an overflow to the river. As that water receded, we ended up with 1.5 feet of sand in the tunnel, which we had to emergency expedite a repair of. And the Central City project will alleviate this risk going forward. This is one of the city's bonding requests for the state legislature this year. In addition, we're working on water quality and flood work. You can see on the top pictures taken recently and in the past of flooding across the city. You've heard how we're taking the modeling to understand how to prioritize and work through these. In the past, flood mitigation projects have included infiltration basins. On the bottom left is the Holland Basin near Edison High School. The bottom right is wet pond. This is at Columbus and 37th and South Minneapolis. And the bottom right is the North Avenue Greenway, 37th Avenue North, and that includes not only underground storage and water quality treatment, but a bikeway amenity for that community. So we're looking not only at the condition, but ways we can mitigate flooding and water quality going forward. Right now, we're working on 5 flood mitigation projects. These are pilot projects that we're working in partnership with the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization in that watershed, the Minnehaha Creek watershed, and the Park Board in areas around the city. And these projects will help us understand how, when we prioritize flood work going forward, we can figure out how to effectively and efficiently get projects in the ground and utilize the public dollars well. So we've come a long way since the time when we were having regular wastewater treatment overflows. I want to say thank you again to the leaders at the city and the staff and Public Works who were committed to this over time. I think we now have a regulatory structure that recognizes the work that needs to happen going forward, but it also recognizes that we have a lot of other drivers and we have the data in our pocket to help us prioritize that and make those decisions in the best way for the city. So if anyone has any questions.
Any questions for the presentation? Councilmember Fletcher.
Thanks for this presentation and congratulations on getting to this milestone. It's exciting. I guess I was wondering, you mentioned the sort of increase of impermeable surfaces, and I'm wondering sort of what role, as we think about sort of adding capacity with the Central City Tunnel and so on, how much should we also be thinking about permeable surfaces and thinking about how much impermeable surface we're adding and how we manage that so that we're reducing the runoff that's required of the tunnels?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Councilmember Fletcher. So our existing stormwater ordinance does require us to reduce rate and impervious surface as redevelopment happens, and we are implementing that, and we will be putting together a new generation of stormwater ordinance that will further that work. The work downtown at this point is just trying to catch up from the last 70 years. We will do that, and we will continue project by project, area by area, to work to reduce impervious surface so that we don't end up in this situation again.
Thank you. Any other questions for this presentation? Seeing none, I'll comment, as an untrained layperson, the format and clarity of presentation was impressive. I mean, I actually think I get half of this now. So thank you for that. And also, I just think that I'm glad that we took this pause. It's very significant. It's highly technical, but extremely significant. It has fiduciary impacts. It has community development impacts. I mean, it's just extremely impactful. But it's, foresight, good policy direction, and a commitment to actually follow through on what we know we need to do and just doing it. And so I think that's a great testament to the Minneapolis way of doing things. So with that, I will submit this as a receiving file. Oh, Council President Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I urgently wanted to thank you for your leadership on this issue. I think stormwater and our storm system isn't maybe the headline grabbing thing that people get excited about, but it's so important to our city, and you have really been there, throughout the years, many years here on the council, of leading us on this issue in so many ways, and I really appreciate your leadership.
Ah, shucks. Thank you. With that, I will move to receiving file. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay, that carries. And we are done with our today's agenda. Thank you. Oh, I know I'm doing something. Oh. Yeah. So move to receive and file. Oh, no. Oh, a real something. Okay. We will move to also authorize termination consistent with the staff presentation in today's report. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay. All right, that carries. Now we are complete.